Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to take a longer look at Arc Raiders, the upcoming extraction shooter that you've probably seen either now during the server slam or some previous tech tests. And it does seem that a lot of people are praising it. Why is that? Well, I want to go through my own impressions to sort of give you the picture of why, and if this is really the next big game. Arc Raiders is set in a post-apocalyptic world filled with arcs. Robots that roam the land, or topside as they call it in game, scouting for humans, and once they see you, depending on the type of robot, they will attack, which raises the stakes even higher as navigating them plus other players can be very intense, and it makes you think before making your next step. Humans have also retreated into the underground place called Speranza, which is going to sort of serve as an HQ for you when you're not actively on the raid. The style of the game is heavily inspired by retrofuturism, with various other inspirations that fit well together, giving the game a look which stands out a bit more in the sea of extraction games, being that, well, the trend has shifted a lot because a lot of companies are now considering it due to potentially having a hit title. I still don't think that this is the same situation as it was with Battle Royales, but it's very similar in that sense. As I already mentioned, Arc Raiders is a PvE/PvP extraction shooter, which means once you go to the surface to loot, if you are downed by other players or by wandering arcs, everything you have is lost, unless you have an item in your secure slot. But even that depends on the type of augment you have equipped, and you can think about augments as bags, sort of, increasing your carrying capacity among other buffs and bonuses you gain by it. Gameplay loop consists of looting various items around the map, which is separated into different areas, with some areas having better loot, but they are usually filled with stronger arcs, aka robots, as I said. The session lasts 30 minutes and players are let into the session during various times, which means you can spawn right at the start or halfway during the raid with 20 and even 15 minutes sometimes left, which changes the dynamics of how one plays, which I think is fine because as learning spawns as you play can give you significant advantage. This way you have to guess, as you never know if someone who got out late will wander into your area which you thought was safe as you looted everything from it. Once you're ready to extract, you approach one of the elevators, call it in, and after I think about 30 seconds, doors open, you go in, press the button to close, and you are safe. Now, besides regular elevators, there are hatches around the map, which you can only unlock if you have hatch key, which goes for about, I saw like 8-9k, so you lose some money, but having a faster, more safer exfil can be better if you have a lot of items or you just don't want to take the risk. Back home in Speranza, you have the usual shops where you can buy items for the raid itself or just various other things you can craft with. But you can also craft and upgrade items with the components you found, which pretty much includes everything: weapons, healing, utilities, and so on, which is pretty much recommended. There are also missions which progress your character further, unlocks new items, and gives you rewards. These missions range from killing raiders, going on certain locations, unlocking some things, and so on and so on. Of course, we haven't seen all of the quests yet, especially in the server slam, but once the full game is out, we're going to have a better idea of what sort of missions and quests you're gonna be going into. But when you think about them, they are sort of the usual ones you're going to have in most of these extraction games, and they're sort of really good for advancing your character besides just going in, looting items, and doing PvP, because, well, you have some interesting things to do around the map. Your character also has a skill tree which separates into 3 segments, that as you level up you can acquire a new skill, which ranges from more stamina regen, better healing, having items weight less, and all of them work as passives, which you, as you play, makes you better as a character and gives you a slight edge over low level players, but nothing which can be too powerful in a sense. You can start the raid alone or with 2 other players, either randoms or your friends, and I noticed that the game places you in queues with other people only if you have a team. So as a solo, I never encountered a duo or a trio, but I think if you're a duo in this game, there is a chance you encounter a trio, which can technically be more difficult or easier depending on your situation. Weapons are in the style of the world, but their overall general types go from pistols, SMGs, SMGs, assault rifles, snipers that work differently depending on the distance, their penetration, how many rounds they can fire. So each weapon is going to be very useful in certain situations, so you have to kind of think about which weapons and which loadout you're gonna be going with. Which brings us to the animation department. I think one of the strongest elements of the game, for me at least, is how your character walks, runs, slides and turns, where you can sort of feel the weight, but it's not annoying as most of the actions you do are relatively fast and responsive. I think their animation team did a really nice job making it responsive enough, but still with that included weight so that your character doesn't feel weightless in that sense. This goes also for arcs too, as flying drones react to terrain and your shots. Depending if you destroyed one of their propellers or legs, they react to it and start spinning out, but still being a threat to you. I think fighting arcs and the way they were behaving and the way they were following me, going into locations where I was really awesome, but also can be really dangerous if you are surrounded with no way out. Some arcs like the Leapers and Queens can follow you in very tight spaces, and because they don't work in the usual aggro system, each session will feel different as their positions are not static and they change their positions often. Bigger robots require cooperation and teamwork, as fighting them alone can be tricky, almost impossible. And in this camp of like, do people want arcs stronger or weaker, I think that having them stronger and more difficult is very good, because they actually pose a significant threat. And they're not actually something to be brushed off as you focus on players or just loot, but rather being much more dangerous that can result in people who are even not in the party to cooperate. As let's say you're fighting each other and you aggro one of the arcs. There's a high chance you won't even get to loot the person you downed, as they will come after you. So in the interest of both surviving, well, again, that depends on whom you encounter. I know some people have a problem with arcs being strong as this, but to be honest, this is just another battlefield, and you sort of have to adapt to these battlefield conditions in the terms of this game. So I think I think it's just better in a sense that the players are not going to be the only threat to each other, but they also have to think about other things, and they have to move carefully and think about their decisions. Graphically, I like how Arc Raiders looks. It's very cinematic, and foliage, buildings, light work, whatever. It gives you like really cool shadows, highlights, silhouettes and so on. Being that this is, well, Unreal Engine 5, I believe, I'm surprised that it ran relatively well for me without huge stutters or crashes, at least in my own personal experience. One problem I can see potentially is what people have been reporting, that playing in lower settings can be beneficial, as in most of these sort of games, is because less foliage, less detail means you see players much better, and well, if it's a PvP game also, you sort of want that edge. And people have been noticing that depending on your settings, some objects can disappear, which creates a problem, meaning that if you see a rock and you're playing on higher settings and the other player doesn't, well, they have an edge over you. Honestly, I do agree with a lot of people. It would be a shame to play this game in lower settings, so hopefully those things are fixed and optimized for the release, or at least patched fast, but we shall see about that once the game releases in a few days, or well, technically on the 30th of October. Another huge and very important element of the game are sounds. They're first off great. There are some issues with steps when you are outside and all, but in most cases I was able to pinpoint the location of whatever sound was being made. And it also sounds fantastic. Everything you touch, start breaking apart, makes a sound. So you have to think, when do you want to loot? When do you want to run? When do you want to walk? So enemies don't hear you or find out exactly where you are. And even sometimes when you are in a certain interior, the building itself, the metal is gonna start clanking and clicking and all of that, and you're going to think there is someone there. I think, again, on the sound part, they did a really nice job to give you that whole atmospheric feeling of everything, like each object around you making some sort of a sound depending on its material. Even robots, they make these cool sounds as stuff clinks and clanks, as I said, around the map, cameras that start beeping and alerting if you pass near them, turrets which can sometimes surprise you, but overall very happy on that audio front. So how is the gameplay loop? Is it actually fun because, well, people don't like to lose stuff? Well, I think this game is relatively fast paced in terms of how fast you get the loot and when you extract, and that's up to you. I mean, you decide what happens in your run. Do you need loot, or are you going for PvP and loot, and ultimately where you're going to extract? One of the things when it comes to extraction games in this sense is that you sort of kinda think about which areas you want to visit, where if you're gonna be going to an area where majority of people are going to go, or you're going to go somewhere else, get the stuff you need and just get out. Do keep in mind that we just had one map for the server slam. On release there are going to be more which you can visit and basically choose what sort of map you want for this session. There are also free loadouts, so even if you're left with nothing, you can go in and have some starting kit. But keep in mind, in those cases you don't have your safe pocket, which makes sense as having it without any minus on spending whatsoever wouldn't be fair. You can also unlock a skill that allows you to craft some stuff within the raid, like shield recharge, bandages and so on, so even if you lose your starting utilities, it's not the end of the world because, well, if you have the resources you can just craft it. I like that idea, especially if you find yourself in a tricky situation. So I never felt like it was a huge problem if I lost my equipment. I mean, yeah, later on once you get access to better weapons, you upgrade your weapons for sure, but loading into a raid is fast, it's not a huge issue. I mean, depending on your gear fear, but if you're having a better weapon, then your chances of taking someone out are much higher, again depending on the skill of both players. And it seems a lot of people like this gameplay formula. Arc Raiders feels like it has a soul, so at least right now I expect the game to do really well on release. Keep in mind that this is not free to play. Game costs $40, euros, or your region equivalent. For a game of this style, a lot of people are wondering if it's worth it. Well, on one hand, having a paid title means less cheaters and a more premium experience in a sense, but of course there will be cheaters. As any online game, it mostly depends on how devs plan to counter that. We don't know, we shall see. If you are on the fence, I would also suggest waiting for full release to see initial reactions as people play and experience everything game has to offer. But so far for me personally, it's sort of worked, I like it and will also give it a try. The big question is, are there microtransactions? Yes, I've seen that the cosmetic ones like outfits, charms, the usual is going to be there. Probably a battle pass as well. I mean, my opinion on this is that for as long as everything is just cosmetic and doesn't influence the gameplay at all, I am completely fine with it. I mean, it seems to be the case for most multiplayer titles and this one is not going to be example, but again, as I said, cosmetic stuff, fine. Everything which touches the gameplay, changes it, alters it in any way, not really for me, but it seems this game, again, as I've seen so far, is only going for the cosmetics themselves. How long will this game survive? Well, I'm sure the initial boom will be huge once it releases, and it all depends on the game itself. I mean, there are no vibes, as usually tends to happen in these sort of games. There is an overreaching goal everybody contributes to, so probably will make people stay in the game for longer. You know, being how fast games move these days, it's tough to say right now. And all of this depends if you like extraction games or not. You know, there is no PvE only mode, just keep that in mind, and I doubt developers will be adding it. I did hear, you know, during their event that this was originally a PvE game, but I guess they decided to make it also PvP on top, which seems to work well for them. The future will tell us. As I said, I had fun in it, it's a very solid title, and it also clicked with a lot of people, it seems. Elements of those bots always being a threat in different ways makes things a lot interesting on the long run if you ask me, which adds another flair to the game. So these were my impressions of the server slam. I haven't played previous tech tests, so this is my experience with this, what I had. Apparently older tests had more features, but even with the limited ones we had this time, I felt like the game showed me enough to consider buying it. But you tell me down below, what do you think about Arc Raiders? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And let me know down below if you want to see more of these sort of videos. Check us out on Twitter and Discord, subscribe and like if you enjoyed this one, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye bye.